Yeah.
So yeah, hello everyone. My name is Mona, and I'm here with today with Dr. Joleen and Dr. Pauling. That rhymes. And on behalf of the Selective Mutism Foundation in Canada, I would like to welcome everyone to your very own SM Q&A, which will run for 60 minutes. Before we begin, I would like to let you know that this session is being recorded and will be shared on the SMF website. I'm going to put the website inside the chat so you'll know where to find it. If you're more comfortable turning off your cameras, please do so. If you prefer using the chat section to type in your questions instead of talking, you are more than welcome to do that. We are so happy to be here and see all of you join our wonderful SM community. We would love to know where you are from. So if you like, please pop that into the chat. Let us know who you're here for and maybe the age of the child or the individual that you are supporting today. Um, okay, so okay, so we have someone from Brazil supporting their daughter who is 10 and someone supporting their daughter who is 5. Thank you so much for letting us know.
Oh, it's late for you, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, someone from UK and Edmonton. That's where I'm from too.
Hmm.
3.5-year-old son with SM, Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
Toronto. Very international.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
All of you are where it's cold, however. Well, I don't know how Brazil is right now this time of year, but I'm in the nice warm Florida weather.
Nice. So we're actually expecting snow tomorrow.
21 right now for Brazil. Is that in Celsius or Fahrenheit, Mirella? I don't know how you Celsius. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's not super warm.
That's perfect, actually.
That is, yeah.
Better than snow. We have snow today.
Oh
So
my gosh. Yes, we have snow tomorrow. So
You all keep it.
we have
And
someone from Pennsylvania as well. Um,
Shayna, fantastic. Definitely very international. I love it. That's wonderful.
hmm.
New
New
Zealand.
Zealand. Oh, welcome, Rocco. How do you say your name?
yeah, New
Ryoko,
Zealand.
maybe?
Yeah,
Ryoko.
Yoko. Yoko. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, welcome
Fantastic.
everyone. Um, so I guess now would be a good time for each of the coaches to introduce themselves and to let the participants know where you're from and what your background is. And then from there, we'll open the floor for questions.
Pauline, do you want to
Jolene,
go
go first.
first? Oh, you want me
No,
to go?
go
Okay.
ahead, Jolene. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Joleen Fernald. I am a speech language pathologist in the Tampa Bay area of Florida in the US. I have a daughter, an adult daughter now, who is almost 24 years old, who was diagnosed with SM when she was 3. So 21 years ago, before we knew even what we know now about selective mutism. And I was already a practitioner at the time, but not specializing in SM. I didn't know anything really at all about SM. And when she got diagnosed, I was informed that as a speech pathologist, I was going to be the expert in helping support my daughter, but I really didn't know anything at all about SM. I hadn't had any background in it in graduate school, except for maybe about 15 or 20 minutes. And it was described as being trauma based at the time. And I knew that that wasn't the situation for my daughter. So it sort of set me down a journey and a path of trying to support her. And we tried lots of different, I guess, philosophies, methodologies, and so on. And we did have success when I really looked at a whole person, when I supported her sensory and her motor systems, when we supported her anxiety, when we supported her speech and language and her social skills. And we sort of a whole package approach, if you will. And once she was successfully speaking across the board, I kind of had it laid on my heart to want to support other families, because I came from an area that had a lot of access to different support, and yet they didn't know what to do. And I figured, I was successful with my one child, that perhaps then as a therapist I could replicate the things that we did for my daughter and hopefully be successful with other kids. And so I started a multidisciplinary clinic with speech therapists, occupational therapists, and mental health practitioners like social workers and psychologists. And we started seeing kids from assessment through treatment. And fast forward from that time in 2006 to now 2025, and I've seen more than 2,000 kids with SM. And I created what's called the DIR, Selective Mutism model, which again is a holistic perspective of looking at kids. And I served on the board of directors for the Selective Mutism Association. That's actually where Dr. Bork and I met one another, is through that organization. And I did my doctoral work on selective mutism and sensory processing. And I don't know what else to share. Probably there's just so much, but with 30 years of experience. But yes, I'm excited to share and answer your questions tonight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joleen. And now, Dr. Bork.
Okay, well, thank you. I apologize that my camera doesn't work. I tried many times, multiple ways. I guess there's a sound, so you cannot see me. Apologies. So similar to Joleen, I have all my three children have selective mutism, right? Back then, there were no awareness, no resources. Like, we were like up against walls, like seen multiple doctors, therapists. They didn't understand what it was. Even after we found out what selective mutism was, we actually found that out in Germany on a trip. Back then, my brother-in-law was dating a child psychologist, and she told us, wait, your kids have this condition called selective mutism. And I said, wow, there's a name for it? Like, it was such a relief. And then, of course, after we came back to Canada, I immediately searched in library, okay? That was before Google. Just looking for ways, just try to understand it. And long story short, I later found out that I also had selective mutism. Looking back, I also wasn't able to speak up for myself. I was bullied, and kind of understand why all those happened to me, but not to my other siblings. So my kids, besides selective mutism, like among the three, they also have general anxiety disorder, separation anxiety disorder, ADHD, depression, like all sort of thing. Of course, specific phobia too. My son was the one who's the most impacted by it, and he's also the one who had ADHD. So he would constantly be injuring himself. Like, he had, I don't know how many times he's broken his bones. Like, his limb got hit by a car, gets stung by a swarm of hornets, like you name it. And the very last straw was he was hit by a golf club into his head, and he airlifted to have emergency surgery. So he did suffer from brain injury, like a little bit permanent. Like, he still feel it. And all those things happen. Oh, and my eldest daughter almost drowned. So all those happened when they were unable to talk. Because, speaking is not a choice for selective mutism. Your vocal cord just shut. So I was desperate. Like, as parents, you're losing sleep over this day in, day out for many years, right? That didn't happen just, for a year or two. It happened for a long time until I found the knowledge to help them. And that's why I became a researcher in selective mutism. And that's why I would say that I'm known as very intense. Like, I have this mission to find a cure that can treat selective mutism ASAP. Because from my own experience, I just couldn't live like even one more day that my kids suffering from silence when they needed help. Like, good thing none of them was lost, like separated from us. Like, what will happen? They will never get back home, right? Little things like that. And during COVID, I was connected to several adults with selective mutism over, social media. And I found out that they were sexual violence victims too, because, they're unable to talk, so they're being taken advantage of. So that's why I had to find a cure for adults too, older youth. And that's why my latest research is in virtual reality. And our study in 2022 has shown amazing results. So I cannot wait to share with you all. But today we're here to answer any question for parents who have kids at any age. Okay, this is our way to give back to the community. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bork. Thank you so much. And I'll just briefly go over a little bit about my background as well, and then I want to open the floor to everyone. So for myself, I'm currently doing my master's degree in counseling. I hope to be a therapist, and my dream is to help all the kids that I have access to who have selective mutism, and to raise awareness really, and mostly really to help parents, because I believe that it is the parents who can help their child overcome selective mutism. And as we all know, therapy is quite expensive. And I found it that for myself, I had a daughter with selective mutism, and she was diagnosed when she was 4 by myself. Actually, was Googling, I remember at the time, when the daycare providers told me that she is not talking to anyone and she is not playing at the daycare. I quickly went home, and I was lucky enough to find a blog from a mother who was describing her daughter having selective mutism, and that she was not speaking in school or playing, and she was frozen. And I realized that that is exactly what my daughter had. And then I realized that I also had it as well, and so did my mom. And in our cases, because of course back then, like Dr. Joleen and Dr. Bork mentioned, there wasn't any knowledge of SM. And so we kind of struggled very much through it. But as I said, I was able to help my daughter overcome selective mutism, and my goal is to provide, empower parents and to let them know that you're not alone, and you can help your children overcome SM. So yeah, let's get started with the questions. I'm going to open the floor to you to ask any questions that you have. You can tell us about your struggles. You can ask for advice or suggestions. And just remember, there are no bad or wrong or silly questions. This is a safe place for you to share your concerns and your worries. So yeah, please go ahead. And just a reminder that we are recording this session. If you wish, you can type in your questions inside the chat and I can read them out, or you can, verbalize it as well. So the first question is the virtual reality app by Dr. Pauline Bork available yet?
Yeah, it was supposed to be available this month, but we found a little bug. Only for Quest 2, the other version works. So next month we'll have it released. Thank you. And we try to make it as cheap as possible to make it accessible for families. Yeah, thank you for asking.
Hi, I have a question. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm so thankful to be here today. My son is 3.5, and very similar situation to you, Mona, where we found out after a year of our son being at daycare, they're like, oh, by the way, he doesn't talk ever. And we were like, oh, that's not what we experience at home. And he was having really, really big dysregulations at home, like head banging, different things like that, I think, because he was masking all day and then coming home at the end. So we got him diagnosed over the summer. I was familiar with selective mutism because I've worked with some children before that have had it. In a different setting. And but I'm just kind of running into some challenges, as I'm sure everybody can relate to, with like our son is currently receiving program unit funding, so he's in an early intervention program, but it just feels like because it is such a niche thing that there's not as maybe as much knowledge around it even now. Like I can't imagine even 18, 20 years ago, like you guys were saying, but it just seems like there's not I don't know. I don't know how to advocate for him or try to. It kind of feels like because he doesn't have these other comorbidities, he's kind of being brushed off. He's got desirable behaviors, right? He'll sit and follow routines. He's not disruptive. So I kind of feel like even now, even though he is getting this early intervention, he's kind of being swept under the rug a little bit. And then so I'm just wondering if you guys have any tips on advocating to get supports for him through that system. My other question too is that we kind of struggle in how to support our son with this because we don't always see that side of him. Like at home, he's very outgoing and talks, a lot. And so we're not often in situations because we're there with him where he isn't talking. And I just don't know how best we can support him. So I guess those are my two questions.
Mona, you want to go first since your name is brought up?
Yeah. So I think for advocating, I understand that it can be difficult, especially when if you want to support your child in the school environment and you're not actually in the school. I found it for myself when my daughter was in daycare, what I had to do because of the daycare teachers or whoever works in the daycare, they absolutely had no idea about SM. So what I did was that I really had to educate them on what SM is and why my daughter is behaving the way that she is, and that what they should be doing to support her and what they shouldn't be doing to support her to the best of my ability. Because I remember it being quite hard, especially if you had to work with uh, with a daycare, especially in terms of like communicating to them what SM is and how they have to handle it. I remember that what I did was that I did try to spend a little bit of time inside the daycare myself because my daughter was most comfortable with me, and so she already talked to me, and she would talk to me. So we would plan our days ahead. For example, I would pick a certain day and a certain time to go in to try to support her for like 10, 15 minutes. So that really actually did help. But yeah, advocating, and now when my daughter started school, I remember in kindergarten, I did go ahead of time before she started the school to let them know what SM is again. Again, this education part is really important, to let the principal know, to let the school secretary know, to let pretty much everyone who works in the school environment to know what it is and that how they can support our children. I don't know, Dr. Pulling or Dr. Joleen, do you have any more information to share?
I think that the education part is definitely the first step, and it's really hard when we as the caregivers are the ones that are educating those who are educating our kids, right? That's the challenge when all of a sudden we are now the experts or supposed to be the experts, and we're now advising and, increasing that awareness. So my gut says that that's potentially part of the challenge, that even you as mom are not necessarily feeling that you're the expert in this, and now you're supposed to try to advocate for your child in this setting where they're supposed to know what they're doing, and most likely they don't have a treatment plan in mind, or they don't have sort of the steps to support your daughter in this process, and they're really relying more on you, which is a very challenging, stressful place for us as caregivers. So I do think making sure that everyone's on the same page, like Mona said, with regard to where the SM is coming from, that it's not a willful decision or a choice not to speak, but that it is in fact that physiological response to the anxiety, because that, I think, automatically shifts how people engage and interact with our kids. So if they understand that it's not the child being rude, that they'll then step back a little bit. So definitely education, increasing that awareness of what SM is. And then for me, a lot of it with the school setting was trying to find that one person that the child was most comfortable with or most confident with, and trying to build relationships and connections without the expectation to talk. So there are always some, I guess, tried and true tips that I think about, which is, again, increase that education and awareness. But then I don't talk about the not talking. Our kids already know that it's really hard for them to get their words out in social situations. So we don't have to constantly bring it up. We don't have to constantly praise them, every time they do speak. I don't sit here and say to Mona, "Oh, I love how you used your words right now, well done," because that breaks up the flow of that conversation and the meaning and the power behind the message. So I usually recommend don't talk about the not talking. And then I'm trying to think kind of in order of maybe importance for me. The next one would really be that you support the physical activity for your child. As I mentioned, the sensory side is really important to me. And so in my research, have found that part of why that neurobiology, that brain fires off into the freeze setting, in our brain, that freeze and shut down and withdraw when we're out in public, is related to how our bodies take in sensory input from our environment. So most people are familiar with the main 5 senses: sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. But there's actually 3 other sensory systems that a lot of people don't know about. One is the vestibular system, the second one is proprioceptive system, and the third is interoception. And really, really briefly, I feel like I'm giving a giant speech, I'm sorry guys. But really briefly, that vestibular system, it is the system that helps us crave being on a roller coaster or not like being on a roller coaster. It's the one that may cause us to get ill in the back of a car if we're not the ones driving, right? So it's that inner ear balance system, but its other job is to guide and direct where the sensory input comes into the body. So if that system's not doing its job, our brain misperceives that information coming in and thinks that you're in a dangerous situation when you're really not. So it's basically this misperception of that input into the brain. It fires off into this, warning signal. We freeze and hope, maybe if I stand really still, nobody will see me. And then that's what's going on with that paralysis of our voice. So we know that when kids swing, we know when kids go on roller coasters or really intense movements like skateboarding, bicycling, swimming, any kinds of sports, downhill skiing, anything that's going to kind of kickstart that inner ear, you're going to notice a really big shift in your child's facial expressions, how comfortable they are in different settings. So you might even notice you take them to the trampoline park or to the amusement park, and they go on all of these crazy rides and they're craving that, and you see this different side of them. Or you might have a child who avoids all of those kinds of activities because for them that input feels like it's too much. But regardless, it's not the right amount of input, and so that's where that freeze comes in. So that was a really long way around to say increasing awareness in the classroom with your teachers to advocate for that, understanding where that SM's coming from, increasing the movement for your child, and then the third one, don't talk about the not talking.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joleen. We have another question. Once a child has overcome SM, can it come back, or is it something they might have to deal with later?
Does anybody else want to answer? I'm happy to answer.
Oh, okay, maybe I'll go first. We actually have seen quite a few cases since COVID. Many children or teenagers or teens who overcame selective mutism, quote unquote, and then suddenly they regress. And so it depends. I would not say, from what I've understand, including my 3 children, like their SM did not emerge again, but one of them had to work harder to get back what used to be for her. Like she would have to on purposely waving to the receptionist, let's say at the gym, and say hello, or anywhere she goes, she just try to make an effort to say hello and goodbye and all that, just try to get comfortable again. So, and especially some kids who have let's say they're taking medication and over the COVID or for whatever reason they stop. You see many of those cases, they did come back, but it is workable. It's the same concept, right? I don't know if Joleen had more. Oh, sorry, I want to add on to earlier about the kids part. I totally agree what Mona and Joleen mentioned. Education is first, and I want to talk about accommodation, which is so important, because imagine your child unable to talk in the school for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. Basic things like asking to go to the bathroom, they're also unable to do. So, my kids had accidents, and over time they became smarter. They wouldn't drink water before school and throughout the school. So accommodation is huge. And I also want to mention about if your child is very young, maybe consider video self-modeling, because if they watch themselves talk, they might just believe they can, right? There are many younger ones, they actually started talking when they watch themselves speaking. So yeah, anyway, I'll let another person continue with a question or the answer. Second one.
Well, in general, we don't see the regression back to the selective mutism. But if you think about SM is that physiological response to the underlying anxiety, if your child continues to have anxiety, which is common, very rarely does anxiety actually go away, you may notice some additional ways that they manage that anxiety. So while you won't necessarily see the SM come back, you may start to see other kind of symptoms associated with the SM. So for some kids, they may become more agoraphobic and want to stay, inside of their home and not wanting to leave their house. Some might begin to hoard. Some may steal. Some may, I'm trying to think of some eating disorders, right? So those are all sort of under the anxiety heading. I don't want to panic everyone and make you think that, because your child has anxiety at 5, that they're going to turn into a 15-year-old with an eating disorder. But if you don't support that whole child and help with that underlying anxiety, then perhaps you will have, you know, this expression of a different form of that anxiety. So just keep that in mind. But in general, once a child is confidently speaking across the board, we rarely see that shift back to that frozen state.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think one thing that we've done with my daughter is that we've made sure that she has play dates, you know, every week if we can, if not every 2 weeks, that she goes to the park. She, you know, we kind of arrange assumptions such that she talks to other kids and plays. Um, I don't know, go to camps during the summer when there's no school, especially. I feel like it's really important to make sure they have friends to play with during the summer and they're socializing so that they don't it's anxiety. So I mean, if you're kind of not you know, talking and socializing with other kids, then you will be definitely a little bit anxious when you start school in September, for example. So just keeping up with all of that, like the play dates and the socializing and all of that really, really helps. That's what I've noticed. I'm going to go to the next
Yeah.
question. Yeah, sorry, Dr. Pauling. Do you have
No, that's why COVID was so quote unquote damaging for many
some?
many folks, not just kids, right? Because
Yeah,
they miss out all those social interaction for so long. Yeah.
for
Sorry,
sure.
I think there are many questions. Yeah. So I will
Yeah.
stop here.
Oh, no worries. So the next one says about to start trying to work with my daughter in school. Myself and husband will be the key people as she doesn't talk to anyone in school. She has recorded one video in school with an iPad in a room on her own, just saying keywords, mostly mouthing and whispering. She said she would like to do more of these iPad videos, and we thought we could in after school to get her to practice talking in the environment classroom when empty with us. Any other suggestions and tips welcome. Um, yeah.
Mhm.
So for me, I would not work so hard on her going through that part of the process, but I would again sort of support her in building that relationship with a key person. So instead of that key person being you, maybe it's the classroom teacher or a classroom assistant. Sometimes it can be the receptionist at the front desk if they're the ones that are available. But to build that relationship and start with just getting her comfortable with that person. If she's at a place where she's gesturing and pointing and, you know, tapping them on the shoulder because she needs to use the bathroom and she's all over, you know, kind of confident and comfortable that way, then we can go ahead and shift to sort of that, I call it the sequencing, systematic sound. My goodness, it's late in the day for me. The systematic sound sequencing strategy. You can see why that's a mouthful to say, which is really just breaking it down into making sounds with your body. So clapping, tapping, snapping your fingers, that kind of stuff, to then making some sounds with your mouth. And these are playful sounds. So making raspberries like or finger pops where you stick your finger in and pop it out, or, you know, that kind of stuff. And then turning those particular sounds into actual speech sounds. Then you segment those speech sounds and then you blend them all together again. And by going through that process with that trusted person at school, it usually happens fairly quickly where kids realize there's no pressure to speak and this is all about having fun and playing with them and just enjoying that time together. Again, working on that sensory system and relaxing that amygdala so that she's able to access. So coming from that bottom up instead of what I call the top down. So instead of working on the peak of the roof, which is the talking, if you support all that other stuff underneath, the talking part comes along naturally as you go. I'll give a really shameless plug right here. I am super excited that I have a product that will be on pre-sale starting April 1st. And it is a card deck to help take you through each of that part of the process. So that first part of helping the child feel more comfortable and confident with that sensory system, the gesturing side, making all of those sounds that I just described, and then getting to verbal communication as well. So if you can, again, get out of your mind, I'm trying to get her to talk, and shift to, I want her to feel regulated and engaged and connected with that key person, you're going to start to see that transition, I think, a little bit faster. If she's okay using the iPad and recording herself, that's awesome. You know, if that's something that she likes, that's that video modeling process that Pauline was mentioning a little bit earlier. So I love that she's doing that. I just want to make sure that it's coming from a relaxed, fun, playful, you know, time where maybe she's making the animal sounds from reading a book. I love the Eric Carle books because there's lots of noises and sounds and so on, with animals related to those stories. The Brown Bear books, if you're not familiar, those repetitive types of books. Dr. Seuss has all kinds of funny sounds in his books. So at her age, I would be playing and having a lot of fun, and try to, I know it's so hard, but try to get it out of your mind that you're trying to get her to talk at school, because the more that you think that, the more that your interactions with her are going to be anxiety provoking and stressing her system a little bit more. So
Yeah. So I agree. So we always have to focus on play, right? Because that calms them down and relax them. And always meet with a child at where they are. And if your child loves video recording, that's even better. So the whole thing about play make complete sense. I've written like at least 2 research papers using play to overcome selective mutism. Because when kids are playing, they're not worried about speech. They're focusing on, for example, the video game that we developed. We're still developing new ones because the old ones are all outdated. It's the same idea, right? We start having kids blow balloon on the screen, so they have to start saying, like making the blow sound, right? And then when they can do that, the next game would be shooting fly away. Fly is coming to eat their lunch, and they would say shh, shh. So it's the same idea, right?
yeah.
Quality and quantity of the sound. And then the next game would be sorting food on a conveyor belt. So if they see a piece of fish bone, they will say yuck, and that sort it into a trash can. If they see like an apple coming down the conveyor belt, they say yum, that go to food basket. So progressively they beating the game while having fun and producing speech. So using play is tremendous. And that's why play day is so important. What I don't like about most play day is they're too structured. They have kids sitting, facing the speech target, and try having a verbal game. Well, the problem is, if you have the child speaking across from the speech target, that is extremely anxiety provoking, because that is a chance of making eye contact, which equals to expectation to speak, which is extremely hard. So even like sliding in sessions, unless you're really familiar about selective mutism and truly understand and have tons of experience, you likely might be doing something wrong. But again, having play day is better than no play day at all. They need all the exposure they can get, all the social activity, social connection. Even if your child is only able to whisper to you, chances are she or he have never whispered in that situation before, in that environment, or the peers have never heard them whisper. That is a progress by itself, right? So I know I always talk about video self-modeling, but video self-modeling by itself is an exposure therapy. because it is anxiety provoking for most kids. Some kids, they could just do it and then they spoke right away. But if your child is anxious about doing that, we have to scale back. We have to do it, meet them at their level once again. We can do audio first, like funny sound of themselves, making into Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and then eventually became their own voice. And then cartoon version of themselves, avatar and all that, and then become themselves. So some kids might need more step than that, but it is important, like Joleen said, we don't want to force them. We don't want to trick them. We don't want to bribe them. They have to be on board and work at their level. If they're able to do whisper, of course, help them. Like they want to talk, they just don't know how. And they just can't. So they need our help for that. All right, sorry, Mona, I want to give you a chance to talk to.
Thank you so much. I think you covered it very well. I think I agree with you with being playful. It's so important to, I think for example, in my case, I found myself anxious when my daughter could not speak to other people. For example, we would go to the store, they would ask her, would you like a lollipop? And she wouldn't say anything. And so my anxiety would peak. And then kids are so smart. They see their parent anxious, they become even more anxious, and then everyone's anxious and then nothing is working. So I think just like, do whatever you can for yourself to be less anxious. If that's like going for a walk, breathing, doing yoga, whatever works for you, so that you can support your child. And yeah, I found playing with your child when, for example, they have a play date and they're not talking to that specific child, they're interested in the child. I remember my daughter wanting a play date with a specific kid, and they would come over, and I knew that she's not going to talk to them, and so we would play a game. A game that I would know that she would feel comfortable playing. For example, hide and seek. We would do hide and seek. She would be running around, and that lowers anxiety in itself, and just making sure she's having a good time. And then the next time round, we would have the same child come over, and we would try something else, and we would take it a notch higher, where she would, for example, at least a nod or high five, or play a game with that child without having to speak. And slowly, it turned into speech. So yeah, I'm just gonna go to the next question because there's so much to say about that. Okay, so the next question is it better to focus on treating the mutism or the anxiety first, or both at the same time?
That's a great question. If Joleen, if you want to go first, or I can go first.
It's so hard. I love these questions. These are so great. You all have excellent questions. So again, if you think whole child, if you think get away from diagnosis specific, and I think Pauline and I are kind of on that same. I don't know Mona as well as I know Pauline, but when I think about a whole child, right, it's really, everything is intertwined. Think of spaghetti, it's all mixed together. It's not nice and compartmentalized like waffles, right, where everything has its own little hole. And so when I think about SM and the anxiety, that the two things go together. So if I think about foundationally, I think about regulation, and regulation is that anxiety and that stressor that is going to be the foundation for everything that we're able to access. I can't engage with you, I can't interact with you if I'm in a stressed state, if my nervous system is overwhelmed. And so I need to relax, I need to take my deep breaths, I need whatever I need to do to get back to that regulated state so that then my words will come out. So I guess the easy answer is you're sort of working on both at the same time, but I guess to a slight degree, you're sort of supporting that anxiety while you're supporting that SM. As a speech pathologist, my goal is always to help support the child in communication. So I don't care, whether they're gesturing to start, or whether they're making sounds, or whether they're actually using full-on mouth words, right? as long as they are able to express themselves in some way and not be completely frozen, then as Pauline just mentioned, we have to take pride and joy in those little baby steps. We have to be excited for those pieces as we're kind of progressing along. So I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to that. I don't know if either of you have a perspective.
Yeah, but I mean, everyone is different. Every child is different. We are all different. And I think the problem with selective mutism and other anxiety disorder is, or just anxiety itself, the child's think, oh my God, I gotta talk. And then they get anxious because they're scared. And then when they're anxious, they cannot talk. Like it's almost like a vicious cycle, like, right? And so, but the study that I conducted, like the one that I used VSR to help this kid overcome selective mutism within 3 hours. One of them had separation anxiety. She had problem going to the toilet at school, like the bathroom. She was non-compliant with the teacher. Like she was just like defined according to the teacher, stubborn. But after she overcame selective mutism, all those conditions disappeared. She didn't have to have her sister go with her to the bathroom 20 times a day. She just went by herself whenever she needed. She happily being dropped off at school. She joined extracurricular activities. She lined up properly. And the same study we did 2 years ago, demographic study, there were many adults, altogether 50, some adults, some parents of kids. When they asked about selective mutism, how would you like to overcome selective mutism and why? Many of them, the one that with other condition, they said, I feel like selective mutism is the cause of my depression. Selective mutism is the cause of my social anxiety. If I can overcome selective mutism, I will be a much happier person. And I see a purpose to live, like in life. So I feel like Joleen is absolutely right. Treat the whole child, whole person. Excuse me. But for urgency, like I feel like I would treat SM first. Like just for my own kids, my son Ayosha have so many accidents, and my daughter almost drowned. If they were able to ask for help, that is so much better. If they're able to join other kids at the playground, they're more likely to go. Or like sleepovers, like just like all the other kids. They're just being paralyzed, unable to communicate. If we could help them communicate without pushing them, right? Once again, we don't push people.
Right.
And I feel like the quality of life would instantly become much, much better.
I think the easier question, as you were talking, Pauline, I was thinking, people often ask me about academics and selective mutism, right? Which do I focus on, the reading and the math and so on. I always say the SM first because you can't assess for so many of those academic skills if the kid's struggling with expressing themselves and demonstrating the knowledge. So in that case, I always go with the SM. But again, if you're supporting that whole child, aren't you sort of supporting the anxiety and the SM at the same time? Because if you understand that the SM is coming from that underlying anxiety, right? Again, it's that vicious circle that we kind of get wrapped up into.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is, are there any vitamins, supplements, or foods that can assist with SM? Are there any common nutrient mineral deficiencies that are common among those with SM?
I am not aware of anything that's specific in the research that has been done. I think in anecdotal information, just from families that I've spoken with and so on, often vitamin D and B12 are, lower I don't know that that's, again, anything that if you were to study it, if it would be any different from a control group, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I've not seen any study indicating or supporting this. I did find one study saying that patient with selective mutism had a mutation in one of the chromosome. Okay, one of the shorter arm.
The deletion,
So
yeah.
yeah, so it's not like something that you can treat with supplement, right?
Yeah.
Again, I don't know. Other people might have tried it and it could help, but it could be other factors, like other variables combined. Maybe they doing multiple things at the same time, and then it just it happened to work, or maybe the child is not as mute. So, like again, like I'm only aware of medication that's been made helpful, but not supplements in research study.
I agree.
Yeah.
Completely.
Okay, and the next question is, I'm curious about, oh, sorry, I lost the question. Okay,
Our
I'm
thoughts.
curious about your thoughts, yeah, on AAC with SM. That this is something that's been introduced and focused on with my 3.5-year-old, no other diagnoses, though I do have concerns about the actual anxiety piece not being addressed.
So as
Well,
a speech language, oh, sorry, do you want to go
go
ahead?
ahead. No, yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm like, this is actually part of my licensure. I love that. So the challenge with AAC is whether it's considered low tech or high tech, and your specific question is high tech. So this is more a speech generating device, is what you're asking about. So for those who don't know, AAC stands for Alternative and Augmentative Communication. So usually it's a system on your phone that you can push a button and it will verbally communicate for you. You can do text to speech, for example, on the cell phone, and that would be considered high tech as well. There are apps on the iPad and so on. So there's a couple things that I always think about. Again, I mentioned earlier, my goal is always communication, and then first, and then if the child is able and that's their preferred way of communicating is to speak, most kids will get there through, because it's just so much more efficient, right? It's way more efficient, it's way more effective. So saying that, right, keep that over here. If I know that a child is not going to be an AAC user down the line, I also need to assess for whether or not they are in that frozen shutdown state. So for me, I call that capacity 1. That's that first level of dysregulation where they're frozen. Because if they're frozen, they're going to struggle with accessing that device. Now, I don't know specifically about your son and whether or not he's accessing the system that they've set up for him, but it can be a nice bridge in between while you're working through the rest of those stages, as long as he's comfortably and accurately accessing it. But you have to also step back and think about the fact that if there's an AAC system in play, it may be drawing too much attention to a child. And if they are anxious already, then that's going to increase the anxiety because now they've got even more of a spotlight, on them. I have never seen, this is usually the follow-up question to all of that, I've never seen a child not talk because of the use of AAC. So if part of your concern is that they're using the AAC, that they won't then be comfortably speaking in their school setting, for example, then that I've never seen that. However, if the school or the provider doesn't know what else to do except give them the AAC device, that's a concern also, which is what you're saying. They're not really working on the actual anxiety piece. And I'm not sure if all they're using is the AAC device, are they actually working on the SM too, or now just providing an alternative means of communication because they're not skilled and they don't know the next steps?
Yeah, I actually wrote a paper about this 10, 12 years ago.
It's been a while,
Yeah, but you know what? Like any form of communication is better than nothing. And we could actually use AAC as a bridge to speech. So we could use it, we could focus on not real time, not direct speech, and slowly moving forward into direct and real time speech. Like in the old days, they are like walkie talkie, like we would even use that as an AAC. But like, again, I want to go back to if your child might get stuck into that relying on AAC, I do have that concern. Like once you get comfortable with it, then you just don't want to get out unless some intervention, or if a child is motivated, not being stuck there, right? So once again, it's not their choice that they don't want to speak. They want to. Most of them, I would say 99% want to speak, but they just don't know how. And it is our duty to help them to find a way, meet them at their level. And if they have the UAAC for now, it's okay. But eventually we have to help them bridge to more like organic, natural speech, right? Either in direct, real time or not. Okay. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Oh, you guys
Alright.
have great questions.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, we have 2 minutes, we have a minute left. So I think we can just wrap up our session for today. Thank you so much for sharing your questions. Please take a look at the website, mutism.ca, there are parent coaching sessions that are offered by SMF on Saturdays for only 10 USD or 15 Canadian. On behalf of the Selective Mutism Foundation, we want to thank you all for your time. All of our information is posted on mutism.ca, or the coaches are posted as well, their information. And you can follow us on social media for future sessions similar to this one. And finally, before we leave, I want to remind that you know that the Selective Mutism Conference, the annual conference, another one, will be held on September 27th and 28th at Bork University, which is near the Niagara Falls of Canada. And more information will be provided on our website, mutism.ca, in regards to this. Thank you so much, everyone, and take care.
Thank you, everyone, for
Thanks,
joining.
everybody. Have a great night.
Yeah, have a great night.